Hello learners, I am Anupriya. I welcome you all to this session on data collection methods, right. Well, you know, data, if we talk of data, the term itself is considered to be the wealth nowadays. Data is money, data is wealth. And since we are living in the age of information, it has all the more become the driving force behind decision making and the innovations that are happening, right. So, talk of any sector, whether it is business or it is science, it is healthcare, government or any sector that you can think of, data serves as the foundation for insights and progress. In this session, we will try to explore the nature of data, types of data, the various sources from where we can gather the data that can be analyzed later on effectively. In this session, we are not going to discuss the analysis part of data, we will only talk about the data collection methods. Since the topic is such that it has to have many other related topics as well, that is why we have decided to divide this topic into two sessions, all right, because one session may not be sufficient for that. Okay, learners, shall we begin our discussions now? All right, let us begin. First of all, let us understand when you are going to collect data, you need to understand what are the various objectives for which you are going to collect data. You know, whether you want to know the taste and preferences of the consumers, whether you want to know the things that are trending, the fashion that is trending these days, whether you are going to develop a new products in the existing company, or maybe you are a startup and you want to begin a business with new product, or maybe you are trying to make improvements in the existing products, right, or maybe there are certain issues which are pertaining to sales, etc. So, there can be various objectives, there can be various reasons for which you want to collect data or for which you need to have data, right. As I said, if the data is analyzed, right, and then on the basis of the analysis, on the basis of inferences drawn, we look at the implication part of it. So, it is really obvious that the quality of data, it plays a very important role, because as we say that garbage in, garbage out. So, if the data is not of good quality, if data is not accurate, the results that you are going to have, which will lead to informed decision making, that will also be of a bad quality. So, quality of data is also very important, right. So, to understand what is the objective of data, which will lead you as to what kind of data, what kind of information you are looking for, or or I would say what method would you use to collect that data, all right. So, now it is a foremost important thing to consider the nature of data first. The kind of information that you are seeking, say for example, you are targeting at a particular problem which is defined, which is already there. Let us talk of action researches, and the problem is already there and you are looking to solve that particular problem, or you are looking to find out reasons for that particular problems. So, now you need to understand whether you want to know the why of that situation or you want to know the what of that situation, right. So, on the basis of that, you can say the data that you are going to have, and data here means information. So, data or information that you are going to collect, whether it is qualitative data or it is quantitative data, right. Please keep in mind whether the data is of qualitative nature or it is of quantitative nature. The methods of collecting the data may be primary or secondary for each kind. If you talk of qualitative data, the methods of collection would be primary and secondary, and if you talk of quantitative data, again the methods of collecting both the data would be primary and secondary, right. Let us see quickly what is qualitative data and what is quantitative data. When we talk of qualitative data, that means we are talking of some kind of descriptions, we are talking of why of a particular problem or a particular situation, right. So, that is why we say that qualitative data is a descriptive data based on observations. You are observing it, and the information that you are trying to gather or the information that you are gathering, it is descriptive in nature, right, and it involves 5 senses: whatever you see, whatever you feel, whatever you taste, whatever you hear, smell, right. So, since you can understand, it is it is the information which is not numeric in nature. You are not getting any numbers here. You are only getting some kind of observation, some kind of feeling, some kind of experiences. So, these data are mostly they are in words unless it is codified or unless it is converted into quantitative data, right. On the contrary, when we are talking of quantitative data, that means we are talking of numbers, that is numerical data, all right. So, since we are talking of numbers or numerical data, it can be of two types again, it can be discrete or it can be continuous, all right. When we say discrete means something that we can count, and when we say continuous means something that we can measure. Let us try to to understand it with the help of example. Suppose I am trying to know how many total suppliers are there for my business. So, number of suppliers, that would be a discrete data, right, because you can tell in numbers 10 suppliers, 15 suppliers, 2 suppliers, right. It cannot be 2.5, but it is whole number, right. So, that will be the whole number is going to be discrete data, right. But there are certain information, which you have to measure, and it may not necessarily be the whole number. Say for example, again if I am trying to find out the length of cloth which is required for a particular kind of dress, a designer dress, in that particular case we can say we may require 5 meters, 5.5 meters, 5.9 meters. So, you can see the continuity is here. This is not necessarily the whole number, this is not the whole number. So, that is continuous data. That means, we are trying to measure it, and when we are trying to measure it, it can have the values, the information in points as well. So, you have so far you have understood what is qualitative data and what is quantitative data, all right. As I said that qualitative data is descriptive in words, right, but this qualitative data, if you have to test it, if you have to analyze it, you can also convert it into quantitative data, though not absolutely, but yes, in a sense it can be given a sense of quantitative data, all right. We will talk about that sometime later. As I said, whether the data is primary or secondary, its nature can be qualitative or quantitative, right. Let us again try to understand it with the help of an example. Say for example, somebody has asked you to narrate about your best friend, right, and you have to paint a vivid picture. That person has not seen your best friend, and you are going to narrate or paint a vivid picture of your best friend. Then what will you do? You might describe their physical attributes such as their height, their hairstyle or hair color, the color of these eyes, the number of size feet, number of shoes that they wear, or how much they weigh, and then you may describe some of the important personality traits as well, right. It's very honest, fun loving, all right. On top of that, you could describe certain thing which have numbers in it. For example, how many siblings they have, where they live, and how often they go to play cricket or any other sports, for the example. So, when you are trying to paint a vivid picture, when you are trying to give information to someone about your best friend, the information that you are giving, it follows into two categories. One is quantitative and the other is qualitative. How? Say for example, when you say my best friend is 5 feet and 4 inches tall, and they have the size of 5 feet, their weight is maybe 63 kilograms, all right, and she has or he has, they have older sibling or younger sibling, all right, 2 older sibling, 1 younger sibling or whatsoever. And when I say that my best friend lives 20 miles away from me and they go to play cricket 4 times a week, see, all these informations are quantitative informations, right. So, this data would be quantitative data. But besides, other than this, when I say that my best friend has curly hair, she has black eyes, she is funny, she is a good singer, right, she may be quite patient or maybe impulsive, or she loves to drive an electric car, right, she has a very contagious laugh or devilish laugh. So, all these informations that I am telling you now comes under qualitative data. So, you have seen that for one objective you may have quantitative data as well as qualitative data. Of course, when you are working as a researcher, you will be handling much more complex data than this example. But yes, this will give you an insight as to how would you categorize your data into qualitative data and quantitative data, right. Yes, of course, the qualitative data, they can be given a shape of quantitative data by assigning codes, or maybe when we are seeking responses on some scale such as the rate on scale of 1 to 5, you're asking the respondent to rate your performance, your product say for example, and they have to rate on 1 to 5, 1 being least the worst and 5 being the best. So you are giving some points or scale to rate your product. So somehow you are trying to give quantitative form to your qualitative data, and because you can now come up with an overall score, right. So we are not going into the details of converting, how to convert the qualitative data into qualitative data into quantitative data. We may discuss it sometime later, but the objective of this session is not that. The agenda of this session is not the discussion of conversion of qualitative data into quantitative data, right. So coming back to our discussion, methods of data collection. Okay. So there may be n number of data collection methods, various, right, but broadly they can be categorized into two categories, primary and secondary. Many times you may hear a term tertiary source also, but keeping certain attributes in mind, even I would categorize them also as secondary data also. So if you read somewhere tertiary source or tertiary method of collecting data, please consider that, right. So to emphasize or to tell it again, that all the kinds of all the methods of data collection which are there present can be classified into two categories. One is primary and the other is secondary. So let us now discuss primary and secondary one by one, right. Now what is primary data? As the name itself suggests, the primary data is the original data collected first hand by the researchers, and since the researcher is collecting, that means it is specifically for his or her research purposes, right. So primary data is original data collected first hand, and when we are talking of primary sources of data, they provide fresh and relevant information tailored to the objectives of the study which is there, right. So as a researcher, you must be familiar with many primary data sources, right, which you can collect first hand on your own. We will discuss all those sources one by one. But before that, let us understand what is the purpose of primary data. Why do you seek primary data? See, for a particular objective, you may go for primary data or you may go for secondary data, whether it is qualitative or quantitative. Either of the method you can use, either primary or secondary, right. But there are certain purposes. When it is there, you have to use primary data. For example, when you have to answer your research questions, as a researcher you must have formulated some research questions. To seek answer for that specific research question, you need to have primary data, or primary data solves that purpose, right. And again, since your situation is such, your problem is such that you want to gather original information, in that case also primary data is important, because you want to make more informed decisions. Say for example, you are trying to develop a new products, or if you are an academic institution, you are trying to design a new program, right. In that case, it is better if you have the first hand information, because one, it is current, the other, it is updated one. So that will serve the purpose more appropriately rather than relying on secondary data. Yes, secondary data can give you an insight. I won't say that only primary data is going to help. Secondary data is going to give you an overall insight of the particular situation or a problem, but in this situation, when you want to have precise information, then in that case primary data will solve the purpose. And of course, it is specifically tailored for your research methods, right, and it gives you a kind of control, that you can also control the quality of data, the information which you really seek, the information which is really required, right. You are in a position to seek or to get or to dig out that information from the respondents, all right. And when you are trying to address a specific population. So, for example, when you are designing a new product, right, you may have a customer segment. Say, for example, you are developing a product which is for teenagers. So, your population is very specific. So, when your population is specific, then the primary data, or the purpose of your study will be fulfilled in a better way if you are using primary data. Or the other thing is, as I say, why to use primary data and when to use primary data. The very obvious thing is, the most obvious thing is, when there is no secondary data is available, obviously you will go for secondary data. But even if the secondary data is available for the situation, for your kind of situation, for your kind of problem, still the data may not be relevant, all right. Then also you need to have a primary data source of information, right. Because you are seeking specific information for specific problem and you want to exercise some kind of control and you want current or up-to-date information. So, you would prefer to have primary data, right. So far we have seen what is primary data and what is the purpose of primary data. Now, let us see what are the various sources of primary data collection, or you can also call it primary data collection method. So, there are various sources. To name a few, there may be surveys, there may be questionnaires, there may be observations, experiments, interviews, or maybe focused group discussion, which is popularly called as FGDs, right. So, let us now discuss them one by one. Let us begin with observation. What is observation? As the term suggests, observation. Again, the observation may be qualitative or quantitative, right. So, when we talk of observational studies or observations, it provides important insights that other market research techniques may not provide, right. It shed light or it explains as to what is consumers or employees behavior and can help answer questions such as how do consumer walk through supermarkets. So, what kind of space should you create for them? Suppose you are working in a supermarket, right, and you are manager there and you need to understand how to design the layout of that particular store, then in that case you need to know how do customers walk through that supermarket, right, or maybe how do they consume and dispose of products, okay. Or suppose you're thinking in terms of employees. So, what do your employees prefer? How do they spend their working day, or what they do when they are not working? All right, because you are trying to develop a welfare program for the student, for the employees, say for example, then you would need to know what actually they desire, what is actually lacking, or where you can give some additional value to that, right. So, when we talk of observational techniques, it is basically aims at understanding what of the idea, what of the situation, or what of the problem, right, to understand what people are doing rather than understanding why they are doing. Why, perhaps observation method won't tell you, right, but what they are doing, that will tell you, and that can lead you to understand why they are doing as well, right, and maybe you will have a different technique to understand why they are behaving in that particular situation, right. So, this is observation method. How they are conducted, observation, how would you conduct it? As the term itself suggests, observation, that means you have to observe for a current situation. You have to observe the stakeholders or the respondents through various methods. You may use video recording equipment, that has to be there, and then you also have to have the trained researchers who can actually go and observe things without creating any kind of hindrance in the environment, right. There can be various tools other than the video recording also, like through one-way mirrors also you can observe, or maybe you can use a recording equipment. Say for example, if the researcher, if you have to know the certain behavior of customers, as previously we have given the example of, we have tried to understood with the example of how do customers walk in a store. Suppose you want to actually know that information, then in that case either you can do it, you can install cameras at several places and you get to know their behavior, or maybe you can use a one-way mirror wherein you can see them, you can observe them, but they cannot see you, right. Why this is important that they cannot see you? Because if they actually see you, if they get to know, suppose you are standing somewhere and if you get to know that you are being monitored, you are being observed, you will become conscious. So, you may not be in your natural self. So, if you want to have unbiased information, if you want to have errorless information, then in that case you should not, I mean, as a researcher, you should take proper caution that the respondents are not knowing that you are observing them, right. Likewise, you can use of eye tracking equipment also that measures what catches customers' eyes and how long their gaze remains, right. There are certain eye tracking equipment as well, and the companies are using that. Say for example, when a customer is entering into a store, on what particular product they are actually, I mean, their eyes are more focused, or they are actually more excited to see a particular product, and how long that they keep on watching that particular product. That will give you an insight as to what their actual preferences are. Or forget about the eye tracking equipment. You would have experienced, even if you go to some particular store, and when you are saying, suppose I am going to a store and I am saying that I want to buy a sari, they will show me various saris, and then they will try to see my, track my eyes with their eyes only, and see what kind of patterns I am liking the most. So now they will bring forth only those patterns, those styles or colors of saris for which my gaze is remaining for a longer period of time, right. Nowadays, even RFIDs, computer chips are also being used. They are also used as observational equipment to trace consumers' shopping paths within a supermarket. And there are various instances or situations where the observational studies are conducted in households, right, with researching, participating in them to see how the inhabitants buy, consume and dispose of products or services. Okay. Suppose you are designing a particular product for a particular community, and you are not very particular, or they are not into the mainstream, say for example, and you want to know their preferences, their taste, their behavior, their likes and dislikes, then in that case, as a researcher, you may have to be with them, all right. And when you be with them, then you can see the real sense of them, the real self of them, what actually they are preferring without disturbing them again, right. So many times it happens, or there are certain situations where researchers, they go and spend even months, observing or living with that particular situation or community, just to dig out the required information. It can also be done through ethnography, all right. Ethnography we are not going to detail in this particular session, maybe we can discuss it sometime later. And there are certain IT enabled tools also for observation. There is some Italian company, and they have developed a special type of observational equipment. So their IC product, is such that it is stored in the mannequin. It is just embedded in the mannequin with the camera and audio recording equipment. So all the movements of the customers, and there is software also that analyze the camera recordings and provides statistical and contextual information, such as what are the demographics of the customers who are just coming in, what type of products they are actually preferring, all right. So there are various IT enabled tools, or this was one such example. There may be other tools also which are being used or which can be used for collecting data. Now there is a term which is called neuromarketing also. So neuromarketing is a kind of study wherein the researcher tries to actually understand how people's brain work or respond to particular communication, advertising or whatever messages that you are trying to give it to them, send to them, by scientifically monitoring brain wave activity, eye tracking and skin response. So this is popularly termed as neuromarketing, and this technique is used to study the brain to predict consumer decision making behavior. They use neural and other physiological signals to gain insight into the customer's motivations, preferences and decision making processes. There is a book which was written in 2008, and the book title is Biology, not biology, right? Biology, Truth and Lies About Why We Buy. It was authored by Martin Lindstrom, and they have also tried to show findings, as to the warning labels on cigarette packages. They actually stimulate neural activity in an area of the brain associated with craving. What actually initiates the craving, so that can study, this can study the same, right? And despite the fact that subjects said that they thought the warnings were effective. Everywhere it is written, whenever you are consuming that kind of product, say for example cigarettes, the statutory warning is there. Still, one is not able to control their craving. So, in order to understand what is actually initiating or stimulating this craving, this kind of neuromarketing kind of techniques are being used. When we are talking of where do we use neuromarketing, right? If suppose you have to test your product design, as I said, suppose you want to develop a new product, all right, and you want to test it, whether it will be acceptable in the market or not. Say when you are developing a new product, it has to go through various processes. You have initiated the idea, you have initiated the thought, right? You have tried to convert into a product or services which is called market offering that can solve the particular problem, right? Pain versus gain. And then once you do that, you try to make a prototype or minimum viable product. Then you test it. And after testing it, you incorporate certain other features into that particular product, and then it becomes product market fit. And again you want to test it before sending it to the market. So, even at every stage, product market fit, even at this stage you are testing it, and after testing it you are making certain improvements if any required, right? And then you have to send it to the market. So, before sending it to the market, again you have to analyze whether it is go to market fit or not. All right, there are certain other parameters also which you would like to know. So, for all these kinds of things, so for product designing, design testing, neuromarketing can be helpful, right? Or maybe if you are thinking of a rebranding campaign, then also neuromarketing can be of great help. Now, let us discuss about surveys. So, what are surveys? Surveys are the most popular method of data collection. That is why they are the mainstay of primary market research, right? The most common types of primary data collection method. And when we are talking of survey you need to have a set of standardized questions to a sample of individuals or organizations, all right? And you want to, suppose you have a specific population and you want to conduct your survey over there, all right? So, there are 4 key ways of administering a survey. How would you administer it? You can administer a survey by personal interviews. You can administer a survey by telephone interviews. You can have web surveys or online surveys, and you can have mail surveys as well. So, through 4 ways, these 4 ways you can conduct your survey. Therefore, when we are talking of personal interviews, we may be in a position to get both quantitative as well as qualitative data. As I said, you can note down the information from the behaviors also, right? So, because of the paucity of time, we have to end this discussion here only. In the next part, in the next video, we are going to discuss the other methods of survey, which is web survey, mail survey, or in-depth interviews, all right. So, till then, keep learning. Bye-bye.